Why is my camera not working? Having a little issue with my camera. And what the hell? Arr. Let's see. Well, I think I might have fixed it. Okay, I need to move that over to the. My mic is on. I need to refresh really quick. I'm not really sure what the hell's going on. I might need to close this out. What is going on? 1 second, guys. I'm having some technical difficulties over here. That's why I need to get an iPad. I can't believe I'm betraying Apple like this. This is what the fuck is going on here? Why won't it? Okay, there we go. Okay. So now I can go ahead and drop this. Let's go ahead and wait 1 moment. All right, so today we're gonna be connecting Montauk. Montauk is a village in Long Island, New York. It's a village in Long Island, New York. Now I covered this a few years ago. I believe I covered it in 2021, if not 2020, and with a source. This source here called the Pyramids of Montauk, Explorations in Consciousness. I was reading, I was reading the prelude, and they were talking about the USS Eldridge, which is a ship. Now, this ship in like 1940, 1945, they were doing like some type of electrical experiment where I think they were trying to time travel, or they were trying to make the ship go invisible. We'll look over the information in just a second. And what ends up happening is the ship itself. Well, later on they would explain it as quantum jumping. Now the word quantum comes from the word uh, the Latin quantus, which basically means how much or a certain amount, right? And in physics, quantum physics, it just means the minimum individual, which means indivisible. My bad. Indivisible meaning you can't divide it, you can't split it apart. It can't be divided. It can't be split apart. So it means the minimum indivisible portion of energy, basically. And we'll look into all that in just a second. Let me go ahead and screen share. So again, so we'll be looking into Montauk. We'll be covering the quantum. We'll get a little bit into quantum physics. If you've been watching season 5 and you paid attention to what Dustin was explaining, he was actually going into quantum physics. I think he might have. I think he might have identified it whenever he was explaining. They discovered basically that the upside down, which we all thought was just an alternate dimension, right, parallel to Hawkins, meaning they existed, but they never pretty much these two realms, or whatever the case is, they never like how do I say it? They basically never they never touched. These are two different realms, what the cases that exist, but in parallel, what are the cases. So you got a veil, like there's a veil that separates the two of them. The veil being like an invisible, basically like an invisible barrier, like an invisible wall, whatever the case is. He talks a bit about that. Basically, it turns out that it's actually a dimension, but we'll read over that whatever the case is. That way, I don't have to do all the paraphrasing and stuff like that. We'll look into the actual information. So the first thing we're gonna do, because I'm gonna be all over the place with this, I'm gonna try not to. The reason why I didn't go ahead and go live yesterday was because, for one, I mentioned that we were gonna talk about the Hellfire Club. Now, the Hellfire Club, whatever the case is actually a secret society. So long before Hawkins, long before we knew about Hawkins, long before we learned about the Upside Down and the Demogorgon and things like that, we're going to talk about the Demogorgon as well. But long before we knew anything about that, because Stranger Things was, it pretty much was, it was produced in 2016, of August 2016. Before we learned about the Upside Down and things like that, the Demogorgon exists in terms, and the Hellfire Club existed centuries ago. It was a secret society. We're going to look into that, and we're going to sort of discover the connection between the two. So that's what we're going to be doing today, right? So we're going to be using a few sources online, and we're also going to be using, whenever we discuss, I'm going to be screen sharing as well. So I have some photos taken out of a page that I'm going to be reading from with the pyramids of Montauk, and also the Upside Down is actually in Judy K. King's book. It's in here. I'm going to be screen sharing a page that I took a photo of from here as well. And then, of course, the definition of the Hellfire Club. We're going to be looking at that. I took a screenshot of that as well. We're going to be looking at all the information. And we're going to see how all this connects. So the question is, this is no coincidence. The Hawkins lab, whatever the case is, being a direct reference of the Montauk, or what's known as the Philadelphia experiment. The Demogorgon, whatever the case is actually primordial created deity or demon, or whatever the case is. All this exists long before. This exists decades before Stranger Things, we ever even knew about Stranger Things. And then, of course, the Hellfire Club exists centuries before we knew about this Hellfire Club that was started pretty much by Eddie. Long live Eddie, right? So let's go ahead and look into that. So who do we have attending right now? We have 2 people in attendance. So shout out to you two. I forgot to send out announcements. I needed to let Janae know and some other people know that I'm live. I have not done that yet. So give me 1 second to, let's see. let's see, where's the group at? What up, buddies? Oh yeah, so I gotta give a shout out to everyone who tuned in about a week ago. So recently I became a Twitch affiliate. One of the goals was to average an amount of three or more viewers, for 1 hour for 4 days. And Marcus, Dennis, Tweezy, Alexia, Janae, Andrew, and others, whatever the case is, all made that possible. They tuned in, whatever the case is, and we got that shit knocked out. And D too. So shout out to my boy Derek. Derek tuned in as well. So I want to give a shout out to y'all. Thanks for making that possible. I am now an affiliate. So that means now whenever you guys do subscribe, whether you're level 1, tier 2, or 3, whatever the case is, I can get paid at the end of the month. So my Twitch is pretty much monetized at this point. That's pretty awesome. So appreciate y'all for that. So let me go ahead and send out announcements. Brodies. Okay, I went ahead and sent that. All right, so this doesn't have to be up. Let's go ahead and click here. All right, so on the right side of the screen, I'll have it pulled up on Google Maps. We're gonna be traveling to the live locations. We're gonna be digitally traveling to these locations. So Montauk, as you can see here, Montauk, New York is a village at the east end of Long Island, at the east end of the Long Island Peninsula. It is known for its beaches, like Don't really care about that. We're gonna see if we can find the original facility or laboratory where they conducted this Montauk experiment, which is really called the Philadelphia experiment, and we're also gonna get into the USS Eldridge. So the first thing I'm gonna do, because like I said, I'm going to be all over the place. I don't know. I feel like maybe I should have done this. I don't know. I should have been a little bit more organized. But sometimes when the spirit is working, that's just not how it goes. I can't be organized all the time. And let's see who's all tuned in at this point. Okay, we have 2 more people. Shout out to y'all. So by the way, whenever you tune in, yeah, I know for those of you who are familiar, who are pretty much who routinely check in and view my content, you got to make sure y'all get into the comment section. Let me know who you are. Let me know what you're doing. Just say what's up. Say something. I don't know. Call me whatever, or say something. So let's look into that. So let's look into the Hellfire Club first before we get into Well, you know what? Fuck it. Let's start here. Let me go ahead and minimize this really quick, and let's go ahead and full screen this. Ask Jay. I'm having a hard time figuring out. Oh, so this is Ask Jay from Instagram, right? We just became friends, if I'm correct, right? Is this Roger? If you're trying to curse me out, I can't. I don't know, for some reason my comment section is censored, so I can't even read what you type. I'm thinking you called me a motherfucker. Did you call me a motherfucker? Oh, what's up, Ash J? So Ash, like, so I forgot your name, right? So I know it's written here Ash J, but I looked at it earlier. It's what's your first name? Is it Asheray or something like that? Roger, like I said, Roger, and you need to change your Twitch name. Change your Twitch name, bro. It says Matt. You're not Matt. You said Ash Juice. You call me Ash Juice. Nice. What did I do to deserve to be called that? You can't. Yes, you can. You need to go to settings, find profile. You need to find edit, and you need to change your You tried. I'll help you out with it after the stream ends. I'm not sure how long I'm going to stream. I'm going to cover most of this at the basic level. I didn't pour libations. I kind of need to do that so I can kind of get that that so I get some assistance from my ancestors and my deities and things like that I work with, because this the revelation I had yesterday, well, the realization I had yesterday was very overwhelming. I just couldn't start the stream because I was originally going to talk about just the Hellfire Club, and we were going to talk about I was going to talk about the Demogorgon again. So what happened was, let me explain how this happened. So what I did was that I finished Stranger Things season 5, and then I went to the comment section and I left a comment on one of the Stranger Things little fan pages, where the case is. It's a really not famous, but it's a really popular, or they have a huge following basically. So I left a comment there, and I mentioned that I was going to be explaining the occult, or the hidden meaning of Hawkins, the Demogorgon, as well as the upside down, or the case is. I kid you not. Then I went to my story to post something. I post information, right? And what I saw, like, I had a bunch of viewers. Now, normally my viewers sit between 30, 40 tops. But then I went to my viewers on Instagram. I checked like maybe 30 minutes after that, and I had hundreds of people, hundreds of viewers. And of course, these weren't mutual friends of mine. These were non-followers. And then I realized I had a problem on my hand. I realized I needed to deliver, because I told people that I would be breaking that down on Twitch, but I didn't say when. And you gotta understand, the Stranger Things fandom, or the Stranger Things fans, it's huge. There are millions of Stranger Things fans. And I'll be honest, I didn't watch Stranger Things in 2016. I don't know how I might have missed it, but I didn't start watching Stranger Things until like 2019, 2020. 2020 for sure, right? So it's been around for about 9 years, right? So I didn't know how. I mean, I recognize the fan base, or the cases. I know just how supporting and just how loving the community is. I know how crazy they go for Stranger Things, and I'm a big fan myself. But they really, they went over to the page to like check me out, whatever the case is. So hopefully, whatever the case is, they'll lean. Asheraya, my bad. So that's why I have to get a dual monitor. That way I don't have to look to my right. I don't have to make a whole 90-degree angle to look at the comment section, because I'm viewing Twitch on this tablet here. But if I had once I get my other monitor, what the case is, I'll be able to view it. As I'm looking here at this other monitor. Hope that helps. Pronounced Asheria. I think I'm pronouncing it right? So it's Asheria, right? Because it's not Asheraya. It's Asher. It's Asher. God damn it. I'm butchering this right now. You don't even know my first name. Trust me. I'm butchering yours right now. I'm trying to pronounce it as best I can. So it's Asheria. So Asheria? Right? Asheria? I'll send you a voice note. Please do. I'm having a hard time with that. And my pronunciations be on point. So fuck it. Let's get to it, because I don't want to lose anyone. So anyways, all right. So we'll dive. So we're on. So if you're looking for the link, I'm currently on fandom.com. Whenever you want to look into the lore of anything, you want to look into the history, you want to look into the background of something, it doesn't matter what it is. You can go to fandom.com, or you can go to Wikipedia. I mean, both of the sources serve their purpose. But when you want to get into more canon and more lore, a place that provides you with more information and sources, you want to go to fandom, right? And excuse me. All right, so Hawkins National Laboratory was a secretive federal complex located in Hawkins, Indiana, right? And was one of the several national laboratories established following the Second World War. Now, the funny thing about this is, and this is why I gotta be real careful, because I don't want to spill into so many different lanes. Welcome to Derry, and I'm gonna be real brief about this. And Stranger Things have certain things in common. These experiments take place in between, or if not after the First World War, and then the Cold War happens next. Now, based on real information, real experiments, and real experiences and things like that, there's a lot of stories that talk about these experiments that went on these bases. Some of these bases were secret. You might know one of the secret. You might know a little lore or a little I won't call it folklore or anything like that, but you might know. Everyone's heard of Area 51, right? So we're all familiar with this whole idea that they have like there's like this secret base where they have a host or house extraterrestrials and things like that. And basically they're just running a whole secret otherworldly UT or whatever the case is type ET type of deal there, right? You learn a little bit about that in Men in Black too, which I could get into all that, but I'm trying to stay on point here as much as I can. But basically all of them relate because all of them deal with some type. There's always some military presence, right? So when you watch Stranger Things, there's a military presence. When you watch Welcome to Derry, whatever the case is, there's also a military presence. Like you see that first episode, right? There's always these experiments being conducted on these bases. Now, based on the information I got, and I have a shitload of books, you can't see them all. There's about 100 books on this side. There's about 40, maybe 50 books right here to my right. And then I have like 3 books, and I have some more books sitting here, right? So I have my own little occult library. But based on the text that I have, many of these sources specifically reference these different experiences and things like this based on someone's account, of actually being there and reporting these certain things. Like they all have this one thing in common. All this shit is always centered around the military, the government, and things like that. All right, season 1 of Stranger Things, we see 11, right? We learn 11, whatever the case is. She's sitting in the lab, whatever the case is. Well, she's at Hawkins. She's at the Hawkins laboratory, and and it says here, so Dr. Martin Brenner, right? Remember in season 1, he wanted her to spy, right? He sat a picture down on the table, and he instructed 11 to spy. He wanted her to find this Russian spy, whatever the case is. And what he wanted her to do was to basically find him and to basically extract some information from him, undetected, of course. So what she does is she basically astral travels or astral projects. Her consciousness, whatever the case is, she projects it outside of her body, which allows her to travel in her own consciousness. And she finds, and whatever the case is, but when she does that, the first thing she does is she actually discovers this thing called the Demogorgon, right? And we'll get all the way into that. But let's go ahead and read on, right? Because I'm going to connect this Hawkins, Indiana, this Hawkins National Laboratory, I'm going to connect this with Montauk. So the question is, what does this have to do with Montauk? How do they connect with the cases? So let's just read a bit, and then we'll get to the source, right? All right, so I'm gonna start over on this. So Hawkins National Laboratory was a secretive federal complex located in Hawkins, Indiana, and was one of the several national laboratories established following the Second World War. I want to say Cold War so bad. The lab controlled several subsidiaries, including Hawkins Power and Light. The lab was seemingly operated by the U.S. Department of Energy, though some speculated it was actually controlled entirely or in part by some other government agency, such as the CIA or NSA. In any case, the lab was headed by Dr. Brenner until the strange events of November 1983. Dr. Sam Owens then took over as director of operations. And this is the part I want to get to, and this is where I'm going to stop. Unbeknownst to the residents of Hawkins, the lab hosted experiments for the controversial government program known as MK Ultra. MK Ultra is very real. There's the CIA a few years ago went ahead and released classified documents or the cases to the public, so you can read over this. But those of us who've known for several years, based on books and things like that, you knew about MK Ultra long before they released these government documents. I have plenty of books that back that up and that cite these things, right? That reference the MK Ultra. These experiments yielded the birth of a number of child test subjects, 11 being a child test subject of MK Ultra. So when you see her and she's in her little, they have her in her little, what's it called? It's not really a gown, but she has on basically the little, like the little hospital attire, whatever the case is. And then they have these wires and things like that, and it's like little helm, whatever the case is, hooked up to her, certain areas. It's actually on top of her head, whatever the case is, but they have these wires and these things like that hooked up, to the side of her head, or whatever the case is. And I want to say she might have had one like back here in this area. So back here in this area is where the pineal gland is. The pineal gland is the brain that sits underneath the brain. There's 3 glands. There's the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus gland, and then there's the pineal gland, where the case is. We won't get all the way into that. But the pineal gland is basically your third eye, right? It's this little bitty thing. It's shaped like a penis. It looks like a phallus. Seriously, it looks just like that. It's shaped like a small clitoris. It looks like the clitoris. Let's be mature here, right? So these experiments yielded the birth of a number of child test subjects with psychokinetic abilities, who were in turn experimented on. The test subjects were strictly confined to the lab premises. Their existence kept top secret by the authorities. Bingo. So the experiments there yielded the birth of a number of child test subjects. We know this why, because remember later on in the seasons, 11 meets Henry, right? She meets him in the lab, whatever the case is, and there's all these other children, or what's called these child test subjects. She meets many of children like herself, right, including Henry. And remember, Henry is I think he's number 1, right? His little number docket, like his little tattoo said 001, right? And then of course 11 is 011. So let's see what the pyramid of Montauk, whatever the case is, has to say. Let's see if this information pretty much backs what we just read here, right? As far as the Hawkins lab, whatever the case has been a residence to child test subjects, where they can when they perform these experiments using MK Ultra, right? So let's go ahead and look into that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna drop this, and give me 1 second. I gotta go to my photos, but it be some crazy stuff in there sometimes, so gotta be careful. I wouldn't want to blind nobody. And see, that's the thing. Where did photos go? Bingo. Okay, I got it. You just can never be too careful. All right, so I'm screen sharing here. Well, this is actually a photo. Whatever the case is, I'm going to screen share a photo that I took. Whatever the case is, that's going to be from this book here, The Pyramids of Montauk. You guys probably can't see it. I'll just hold it up, or maybe I have a picture in here somewhere. Did I leave a picture here? That's not the picture of her. It's in here somewhere. But this is basically the photo of the book, right? Okay, so we'll go ahead and read here, right? So the Montauk Project experiments. There's that word, experiments, right? In Time was released in June of 1992, and has created a stir of intrigue and queries for more information ever since. Montauk revisited adventures of synchronicity, sought to answer many of those questions, and ended up providing. This is not what I'm looking for. Even more elaborate scenario that left us on the threshold of the occult and in relationships with the major mystery schools of Earth. Now, mystery schools would be like places like, it's talking about these invisible schools, these spiritual schools, where the case is. There's many of them. There were mystery schools in Egypt. There were mystery schools in Atlantis. There were mystery schools in Tibet. There still are some today. There still are some in Egypt as well. The mystery school is basically anytime you decide to take the time to study this information and self-educate yourself, you have entered, well, any of the occult or metaphysics, you have entered what's known as the mystery school. Mystery, root word being, the word mystery means hidden. The word hidden also means invisible. The word invisible also means spirit, and the word spirit also means breath, because you can't see breath. So breath is what? Invisible, correct? It's hidden. You can't see it. It's occult. The word occult means hidden. So the mystery school is the hidden school, or the invisible school, or the spiritual school. That's what that is. All right? So you see the word occult there, right? So it says, left us on the threshold of the occult in its relationship with the major mystery schools of Earth. All right, so the third book in the Montauk series, Pyramids of Montauk. I'm going to jump around here because what I'm actually looking for. Okay, we're going to jump down here to where it says original. So let me unhighlight that. The origin of the Montauk project dates back to 1943. Now, why is that important? We're going to take a mental note of the year 1943, because a minute ago I mentioned the Cold War. I mentioned, of course, we read about World War I, or what the case is. We got to remember the World War I it started around after the Depression, which happened in 1920, correct? World War I starts around, I want to say, around the 1930s. But we know it ultimately ends, or at least Hitler allegedly dies in like 1945, correct? So the origin of the Montauk project dates back to 1943, when radar invisibility was being researched aboard the USS Eldridge. All right? And for those of you who have never seen the USS Eldridge, we're going to take a look at that. So let's go here. Let me enlarge this. Because you might be asking yourself, what the hell is the USS Eldridge? All right, so the USS Eldridge is a ship, though. All right, and take a look at that. So when you type that in, you see how Stranger Things automatically connected to it? That's not a coincidence. All right, so I'm gonna read this AR overview real quick. So the USS Eldridge, DE 173 or 173, was a real U.S. Navy destroyer escort that served honorably in World War II, escorting convoys and supporting Allied operations. But it is most famous for the debunked Philadelphia experience. So remember earlier that I referred to the Montauk experiment as the Philadelphia experiment. We're going to read into that too. The Philadelphia experiment myth, which claims it became invisible, and they're trying to be funny with that. Now they want to call it a myth. There's way too much text that reference this shit. None of this is myth. I mean, choose to believe whatever you want to believe, whatever the case is, but be very mindful when they throw that fucking word myth around, right? So, but it's most famous for the debunked Philadelphia experiment myth, which claims it became invisible and teleported in 1943. The ship was actually transferred to Greece in 1951, renamed HS Leon, blah, 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 blah. Who gives a fuck? So let's just I wanted y'all to actually, get a look at this USS Eldridge. So if you can see here, I don't think I can blow this up any bigger. I'm going to try though. Is there a gallery or something? Fuck it. We'll just, I think this is satisfying enough. So you kind of got an idea. You know now that it's a destroyer. It's a ship, or the case is. They use it to convoy, military personnel or Navy personnel and things like that. So there's a look at that. I'm not sure what happened to this guy. It looks like, I don't know, maybe this is from a movie, or it says the terrifying story of the Philadelphia experiment. Da 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 da. Um. So yeah, there's a nice little photo of that. I think that's as good as it gets. This is a more of a full view of the ship, you know, from the side and things like that. Take a good look at that. Um. Okay, so give me 1 second. Because the USS Eldridge is one thing, but okay, bingo, I got it. And let's go back to photos. And let's go to page 2. Let's blow this up really quick. Okay, so did we finish the other? Okay, so the origin of the Montauk project dates back to 1943 when radar invisibility was being researched aboard the USS Eldridge. I know I've already read this, but I kind of have to go back over it again. As the Eldridge was stationed at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, the events concerning the ship have commonly been referred to as the Philadelphia experiment. So, the objective of this experiment was to make the ship undetectable to radar, and while that was achieved, there was a totally unexpected and drastic side effect. This ship became invisible to the naked eye and was removed from time and space as we know it. Now, that's something that we learned in season 5 of Stranger Things. They start to talk more about time. Dustin discovers that the Upside Down is not an alternate dimension, but a what? It's a sort of like a, I think he said like a wormhole. We'll look into that, right? But basically, they called it like an abyss, right? And he mentioned this term called exotic matter, is what he called it. Now, that's dealing with quantum physics. We'll have to get into that as well, though. I don't know if I'm gonna do all that today because I didn't want to be everywhere with this shit. I really didn't want to. So I probably should have just named this the Montauk Experience, and we should have just connected this to Hawkins. So maybe I don't get into the Hellfire Club. I don't know. I have no idea how far I'm gonna go with this, whatever the case is, because season 5 blew me away because I always thought that the Upside Down was just an alternate dimension. Well, season 5 blows that shit out of the water. It's not really an alternate dimension at all, right? So, all right. So the ship. So we learned here what the case is, that the Philadelphia experiment. The objective was to basically make the ship invisible or undetectable, right? The whole objective of the experiment was to make the ship undetectable. So undetectable to radar, right? And while that was achieved, so they did achieve that, right? There was a totally unexpected and drastic side effect. The ship became invisible to the naked eye and was removed from time and space as we know it. Although this was a remarkable breakthrough in terms of technology, it was a catastrophe to the people involved. Sailors had been transported out of this dimension and returned in a state of complete mental disorientation and horror. It says some were even planted into the bulkhead of the ship itself. Those who survived were discharged as mentally unfit. That's funny. That's really funny. If you guys have any veterans, if you know any veterans in your family, talk to them, especially the ones who've actually survived, World War II. And if you happen to have anyone that survived World War One, or the Cold War, definitely talk to them. I'm pretty sure if you ask them questions about some things that they seen that maybe they never told anyone or wanted to talk about, you want to get that lore. You want to get a pen and some paper or a pencil and paper, whatever the case. You want to jot down whatever it is they're going to tell you, because there's a lot of shit that goes on in the military, and these veterans come home and they are labeled mentally unfit. You know where they are? They're not even the ones you typically see and visit in your family. These are the motherfuckers that are under these under the under these highways and things like that, under these bridges. The homeless people, the ones labeled mentally unfit, the ones society tends to not give a fuck about, the ones we pass up every day when they're holding a thumb out or they're holding a bucket out for spare change and shit. These people are actually a lot more educated than you think, and they're not crazy. They more than likely seen some shit, but you have to talk to them. You need to ask around. A lot of them are veterans. You hear about this all the time. A lot of veterans are on the street. A lot of them are homeless, right? So you want to talk to them and ask them about things that they might have witnessed. You know, ask them if they served in the armed services. And yo, you'd be surprised what you discover. Because what we're gonna uncover, and I know we're gonna uncover this, is that I know for a fact that the creators of Stranger Things, the Duffer brothers, whatever the case is, they definitely studied the occult. They definitely studied the Montauk or the Philadelphia experiment. They definitely studied quantum physics. Somebody studied quantum fucking physics, because there's no way you break that science down in season 5 the way Dustin does without someone citing that shit from the actual science sources itself. Like, there's no way you do that. Although I didn't understand everything like I'm some goddamn, like I have a PhD or something like that. I definitely was familiar with the language. I was familiar with the tone. I was familiar with the things that they were saying, because I have books on quantum physics. I have things like that. Even this book itself, the ISIS thesis, goes into quantum physics. And here we go right here. Passages of the quantum holographic universe. I have books on the holographic universe that goes into physics and the quantum zone, or the quantum physics and things like that. So if I have access to this information, then I'm sure multimillionaires have access to this information. Hollywood has access to this information. Don't think that they don't, because information is readily available to those who seek it. And if you got money, you got access to a fucking shit ton of it. I mean, what else would you do if you had millions? You would have to seek information. You would probably want to know more about things like this. You got all the time in the world when you got all this money in your hands, because you can afford to take a fucking day off. Unlike the many of us, or the masses, or the majority of us, we got to clock in. And then we got kids and shit. So by the time you get off of work and things like that, you got to go home, you got to lay down, you got to have dinner, whatever the case is, and you got to lock in, take a shower, because you got to be prepared for the next day. So you don't have time for any of this, whatever the case is. You're too occupied. You've already submitted, and you're already enrolled in the program. So you don't have time to look into stuff like this. You wouldn't believe it. You think all this shit is science fiction. I'm telling you now, the truth is stranger than fiction will ever be. There's a lot of things, where the cases you can go looking into. This information is available. They just know you won't go looking into it, and nor would you believe the shit, right? Because what I guess, would be considered knowing, everything, right? And anything that you hadn't been taught growing up, with the cases can't possibly be true, because they would have taught this shit in school. But let's continue on, right? Because now I'm going into lecture mode. So those who survived were discharged as mentally unfit or otherwise discredited, and the entire affair was covered up. Talk to the homeless. I'm going to go talk to a homeless person. There are plenty of veterans on the street. In fact, this is why I love research. So we're going to type in veterans. Damn it. Veterans, or U.S. veterans, right? My bad. Homeless U.S. veterans. Bingo. So as of early 2024, roughly, and let me enlarge this really quick. As of early 2024, roughly 32,882 U.S. veterans experienced homelessness on a given night. On a given night. A record low according to the HUD's point in time count, showing an 8% decrease from 2023. doesn't it doesn't change the fact there's a significant amount of homeless on the street, and they're saying here that it's well, then I don't really see the actual percentage, but it says an 8% decrease. However, 32,000 homeless people on the street is a fucking lot to me. I don't care if the majority of it was considered millions. There are 32,000, roughly 33,000 veterans, U.S. veterans, homeless on the street, or the cases, or at least they experience homelessness, right? Now, when you go and talk to these people left home to go and fight in the war, correct? So how in the fuck do they come home and not have a home to come? How do they come back from, deployment and war and stuff like that and don't have a home to, don't have a place to go home to? It's funny to me, right? But what's more interesting is finding out, why, of course, maybe the war is over, these people come back, whatever the case is, right? But I would like to discover, what took place or what these people experienced, right? Well, at least find out. I mean, they may be open to talk about this. You'd be surprised. Homeless people, they have common sense. These people, they're literal people. Don't confuse it. I mean, they are. Talk to these people, especially the older ones. If they look of age, if they look like these are middle age or these are, elder age people, talk to them. They might sound or look crazy to you, but they are very sane, and they probably have. That's probably why they go crazy. They don't know who to talk to. They don't think they can talk to anyone about this shit, and that alone can drive a person insane. Imagine just knowing some shit and having to keep it to yourself. Seeing some shit you just don't understand, but understanding like this happened. This is reality. Because you remember when they go over here to these foreign countries and stuff like that, and they experience these things for the first time outside of things they've seen in movies, they're also experiencing shit that, that are traumatizing. And they are experiencing things that they are thinking to themselves, people back home wouldn't believe, right? And I don't know how everything works in the military, who talks to who, like, so after a person shoots someone on command, right? After someone's being ordered to kill, right? Who gives them therapy? Like, who do they converse with? Like, what happens to these people? I don't know what it's like. I mean, I've seen a dead body before, but I don't know what it's like to actually have to take a life, right? I don't know what that's like. And I'm saying, like, you're in the U.S. military, you're in the U.S. Army, you're in the U.S. Navy, whatever the case is, and you're being ordered to take out what you're told is the enemy. But sometimes that enemy doesn't necessarily reflect, you in age or even a few years younger. These are children. They go to fucking Afghanistan and Pakistan and kill children. Children are walking around with RPGs and stuff like that, rocket powered grenades and stuff like that. They're being seen as threats. So they neutralizing anything that looks like a threat. Or they just say this entire area here, whatever the case is a threat. If you see it, kill it. You don't know what that does to a person. Many of these people come back after these experiments. After these experiences, and then they do. A lot of these people do, turn to drugs and things like that. Or they're never right in the head mentally. So they come back home, and these people that left they're not the same people going in. I mean, they're not the people coming back. They're not the same person. They're not the same as they went in, right? Basically, these aren't the same people. The people that have come home are not the same person that they once were when they went in, And at this point, like, I'm just getting a lot of downloads, so you gotta just bear with me because a lot of this information is coming in to me now, so I didn't really expect to go this far into it. I'm trying not to, but it's kind of hard. It could be my grandpa. My grandpa served in World War I, and he died the year I was born. So he's he's one of the more memorable. Not that I don't remember meeting him, but I hear a lot about him. When I think about veterans, I think about him the most. Although I don't remember ever meeting him. Of course, I was a baby. So, okay. Okay, so here it is right here. So look, so it says causes of contributing factors to homelessness, right? Past conflicts, Vietnam, contribute to higher rates of substance use. So there we go. So remember I was talking about how they come home, they turn to drugs and things like that. So these traumatic experiences from these past conflicts contribute to these rates of substance use. Poverty and lack of support. Limited income. So so you gotta understand, whenever they go into the armed services, they are given an income. They are provided with income, right? Weak support networks. So when they come back, whatever the case is, what contributes to homelessness? Limited income, right? Weak support networks and substandard housing increased risk. A lot of them come back with health issues. High rates of mental health. See, I mentioned that a minute ago. Substance use and chronic health problems. You know? And there's that. Now, what fucking point was I trying to make? I have to go back to the book, right? Because I was getting ready to tie into something, and I haven't done that. So, let's blow this up again. All right, so those who survived were discharged as mentally unfit, because that's the point I was trying to make. That's why I need to stay on point. Those who survived were discharged as mentally unfit or otherwise discredited, and the entire affair was covered up. So, that's something I want to point out. Those who survived were discharged and mentally unfit or otherwise discredited, and the entire affair was covered up. So you gotta ask yourself, what happens to these people that are discharged? I mean, that are pretty much, let go and labeled mentally unfit. They're discharged. So what happens? They come back home. Now let's tie this in, right? So we just read a minute ago causes and contributing factors of homelessness. You got to imagine what you just read there. When they are discharged as mentally unfit or otherwise discredited, and and things like that, they are discharged. So when they're discharged, they are then relieved of duty. They're sent back home. So many of these people come back to their home states, their hometowns. But when you read over here, right? When you read over here to causes and contributing factors, past conflicts, poverty and lack of support, health issues, high rates of mental health. Where am I getting at with any of this? What's the point? What's the point that I feel like I'm trying to make here? That the person who's explaining this, whatever the case is, I know what he's getting at with this. Basically, the survivors who can basically give you a full account of what they experienced can be discredited, will be discredited, have been discredited because these people were labeled mentally unfit. Society, even in our society then, and even in today's society, we write the homeless off. I mean, let's be honest. We see them. You can't help but seeing them, especially when you're driving down Westheimer or you're driving down the 610. Like, come on. If you live in Houston, you see them. Or you live anywhere in the world, you've seen homeless people. You try not to fucking look at them. Because, once you make eye contact, can I get $1 from you? You get what I'm saying? And sometimes we don't always have cash on hand. Or if not, we don't have it at all to give. Or fuck it, you just don't want to give sometimes, right? And so you do your best, whatever the case is, just the main focus, or just, keep yourself, keep your eye on what's ahead of you, whatever the case is, because looking at them, whatever the case is, you don't want to feel guilty, if you've experienced that, whatever the case is, you know how that feels. It doesn't feel good. Like, we don't want to see them like that, whatever the case is. But however, as time goes on, you see them, but then you stop seeing them. You get what I'm saying? You see them, but you don't see them anymore. And you write them off, right? So those who survived were discharged as mentally unfit or otherwise discredited, and the entire affair was covered up. So, when you read about the contributing factors and things like that, and you think about the homeless, and you think about how these homeless were more than likely once veterans who served in the United States military, Navy, and Air Force and things like that, you probably often don't think about the ones who were discharged. And if you do, are you really thinking about the ones who were discharged? Are you thinking about why they were discharged? I would challenge anyone to, especially after since the Stranger Things finale has ended, to go and talk to some of them. Because once you start to learn more about the upside down, or the Hawkins experiment, and then you start hearing more about this Montauk, because Montauk to a lot of people is new. It's a bit it's foreign, or whatever the case is, because many people haven't heard about it. But the funny thing is, Montauk, whatever the case is, for those of us who've read or whatever the case is, and who've known a bit about the Philadelphia experience and the Montauk experiment, when you watch Stranger Things, you understood then that there was definitely a connection. Stranger Things, Hawkins, or the case in Indiana, and even It Welcome to Derry is a direct fucking reference of something that actually happened. And it made Stranger Things very, very, very interesting. But anyways, I hope I'm making my point. This is why I really need to sit with myself, because there's a lot to go over here. Let's see who's all here. Holy shit. Okay, so after the war, research continued under the tutelage of Dr. John Von Neumann, who had directed the technical aspects of the Philadelphia experiment. His new orders were to find out what made the mind of the man tick and why people could not be subject to interdimensional phenomena without disaster. A massive human factor study was begun at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island. So bingo, there we go. Now we have a location. Let's go look this up. Let's see what we discover here, though. So we're gonna go to maps. There's the laboratory right here. So this is okay. So I'm pretty sure they did construction. This is the laboratory, whatever the case is. Do you kind of get Hawkins vibes here? When we go look at the Hawkins lab in Georgia. I forgot the actual. Nah, let me just go to maps. Let's go to maps real quick. Okay. So for those of you who are familiar with this building, this is what's known as in Stranger Things as the Hawkins lab. This is where the MK Ultra, this is where 11 was this is where Dr. Brenner was conducting experiments on children and things like that, and 11 included, right? So when we look at this building here in Atlanta, Georgia, and you look at this place has been renovated, and it's just they've made a lot of changes to it. But this is the Brookhaven National Laboratory. Looks like it's in Yaphank. I thought this was gonna be in Long Island. But anyways, this is the lab, whatever the case is. So the pyramids of Montauk mention it. So let's see, what is it saying about this? So so Dr. John von Neumann, who had directed the technical aspects of the Philadelphia experiment, his new orders were to find out what made the mind of a man tick and why people could not be subject to interdimensional phenomena without disaster. A massive human factor study was begun at Brookhaven National Laboratories on Long Island. So it is on So it is on Long Island. It was known as the Phoenix Project. Von Neumann was not only the inventor of the modern computer and a mathematical genius in his own right, he was able to draw on the enormous resources of the military industrial complex, which included the vast database of Nazi psychological research that the Allies had acquired after World War II. All right? And you guys should be reading that with me. I'm thinking maybe I should have. Who's all here? That's interesting. It really is. And as I'm reading this, I'm also discovering it a bit more too, because I covered this in like 2021, but I covered it lightly. And I want to say I didn't bring up the receipts yesterday. I went really light, but I know I covered this in 2020 for sure. Going into the end of the year, December, because I posted some receipts from that yesterday. But and then that's where it stopped with me in one of the cases. I went into the USS Eldridge. I talked about the ship. I shared a bunch of information. So, and that's just how I used to do things. So now I'm going live and I'm actually talking, showing my face more, and actually reading directly from the sources and screen sharing. Something that I wasn't doing in 2020, 2021 at all. I normally just take screenshots of certain things, and then I share the information, and then I leave it. I give my little explanation and things like that, and we look at sources. So this wouldn't be the lab where what I'm trying to connect is where was the lab where they were conducting these experiments on kids. Well, you'll have to get into what they call the MK Ultra, which is mentioned here, right? So it's mentioned here. So understanding the Hawkins lab is headed by Dr. Martin Brenner. Until the strange events of November 1983, Dr. Sam Owens then took over as director of operations. So you see the similarity there? You see the similarity between the doctor here and then the doctor here that's mentioned in the text here. Dr. Von Neumann, right? So after the war, research continued under the tutelage of Dr. John von Neumann, who had directed the technical aspects of the Philadelphia experiment. His new orders were to find out what made the mind of a man tick and why people could not be subjected to interdimensional phenomena without disaster. A massive human factor study was begun at Brookhaven National Laboratories on Long Island. So the a human factor study had begun at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island. It was known as the Phoenix Project. Von Neumann was not only the inventor of we don't care about that. And it's funny how the Nazis always somehow they're always mentioned in things like this. Anything dealing with UFOs, because you gotta understand something about Hitler. Hitler was heavily into the occult. Let's just do this. Because what better way Hitler's obsession with the occult. Now I know he visited Tibet. Okay, so Adolf Hitler did not have a personal obsession with it. Yes, he did. He often mocked and suppressed overt occult practices. Not true. I'm not sure what the hell AI is talking about here. It says the persistent myth of his obsession largely stems from post-war sensationalism. Although some high-ranking Nazis, notably Heinrich Himmler, were deeply interested in mysticism and pseudoscience. Hitler was into the fucking occult, and Heinrich Himmler was like one of his guys. Whatever the cases, he sent Heinrich Himmler to places like Tibet and places where they could study more about Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis and shit like that. He was definitely into the occult. All you have to do is go check out other sources. AI can be fucking wrong and it can be tweaked. How do I know? Because I only started using ChatGPT a few months ago after a breakup, whatever the case is, after I discovered the girl that was talking to me for a whole fucking year was actually using ChatGPT to talk to me. So this bitch, I thought she was on the frequency. I thought she was on the frequency like me, but there were certain things that she would do. Her actions basically really made me side-eye her. Because she knew the tone and the language of some of this shit. And it's not to say that she wasn't into any of it. But it's just some questions that she had for me or whatever the case. And some of the things she did made me think there's no way that you can be into any of this shit or really understand it from the heart, whatever the case is, or just know these things from the heart or have a high level of discernment and intuition, and you ask me certain questions that you asking, and you doing some of the shit that you do. Come to find out, I would find out after me and her, went our separate ways. There's a certain tone that ChatGPT uses, and it has certain little elements that you can identify, right? Whenever you're using it, those M dashes and things like that. I used to wonder, like, why the fuck she always uses that? Because the average person, whenever we're texting, we're not using symbols and shit like that. We're not using them. You're gonna talk in a human fashion. You're gonna have, grammar errors and things like that. Like you're gonna have those little errors. But some of the things she would reply, like some of the things I would read, like when I would read her replies over the case, I would just notice like something always felt off. So before my brain, whatever the case is, could actually put, Before I actually understood it, I always knew something was off about her, though, in general. But then I would later find out when I talked to my priestess in Massachusetts, she would talk to me basically, and she'd ask me, she was like, well, do you use ChatGPT? You should take that, you should take your natal chart, whatever the case is, and you should actually have ChatGPT read and explain to you what your natal chart means. It can do that. And I was like, I heard so much about ChatGPT and AI, but I never really looked into it much. I haven't. It's been around since 2022. But I didn't look into it. Not until I started with Apple. I started hearing so much more about it, once I became a specialist here in Apple, Apple Gallery here in Houston. And, whenever the iPhone 16 Pro Max, whenever those models came out, whatever the case is, they introduced what you call Apple Intelligence, right? Apple Intelligence being your on-device personal assistant. It's AI. And ChatGPT and Apple Intelligence they're pretty much connected, or whatever the case is, they can work together. So if you have a 15 Pro Max, whatever the case is, you have the 15 models or the 16 models or the 17 models, then AI is integrated within these phones, whatever the case is. And Apple Intelligence, well, the 16 models are made for Apple Intelligence. And then of course the 17, whatever the case is, it being the new model, whatever the case is, I'm pretty sure there's not much. There's nothing really and there's nothing too much difference in terms of in Apple Intelligence or AI, artificial intelligence, when it comes to those devices. Not at all. There's other specs which differ, which pretty much make the phones different, but Not really much so much as dealing with AI, whatever the case is. I mean, Apple the 16 models are made for Apple Intelligence, literally, right? So what are we looking at here? We're gonna go to Wikipedia really quick. Okay, so the association of Nazism with occultism occurs in a wide range of theories, speculations, and research into the origins of Nazism and into Nazism's possible relationship with various occult traditions. Such ideas have flourished as part of a popular culture since at least the early 1940s during World War II. Why do I keep mentioning the fucking World War One? I don't know how I got that confused. I'm thinking World War II for some reason. I kept thinking it happened way later. It doesn't. It happens in around the 1940s and a little earlier, right? And gained renewed popularity starting in the 1960s. Okay, so they're gonna list some sources here, right? We're gonna talk about Nazi occultism and things like that. And I'm looking for that word. I'm looking for that word obsession because there's a book that it's titled like Hitler's obsession with the occult or some shit like that. AI is gonna tell you that he didn't have an obsession with the occult. Indeed, he fucking did because there's many sources that actually reference this. In fact, there's the book. Or this is just a source, right? Hitler's Obsession with the Occult by Eric Kurlander. Now, I'm not going to get all the way into this. The Nazi fascination with the occult is legendary. Legendary. Yet today is often dismissed as Heinrich Himmler's personal obsession or wildly overstated for its novelty. Fucking told you. So see how AI is telling you basically that it's Heinrich who was personally obsessed with it? That's bullshit. Hitler himself and the Nazi, whatever the case is, were definitely fascinated with the occult, right? It says in Hitler's Monsters, Eric Kurlander reveals how the Third Reich relationships to the supernatural was far from straightforward. Below, he recounts Hitler's occult beginnings and how they infiltrated into the propaganda and politics of the Nazi Party. That's about all I really fucking need to read because I didn't want to go all the way into Hitler just yet. But Stranger Things, the Montauk experiment, the Philadelphia experiment, things like that are all connected. And Hitler are all connected. It is very much connected. What this is going to allow me to do, this stream here, not ChatGPT. Yes. My bad. I got to look at the comments sometimes because the comments are here, so I can't see what y'all are typing until I look over here at this tablet. But yeah, she indeed used ChatGPT. She indeed used it. But the thing is, I'm spiritually sensitive. I am. When something is off, whatever the case is, I can feel it, even if it doesn't make logical sense or rational sense at the time. Something was off about her long before I even started questioning, the language which she would type to me in, the way that she would text me and things like that. Just knowing what I know, when people, you can't really wear this mask for too long. So when she did end things with me or whatever the case is, because I didn't tell her Happy Valentine's Day. Imagine knowing someone for a few years, dating for an entire year, and then they break up with you because you don't tell them Happy Valentine's Day. I knew that was just an excuse. That was just a reason she used to make her exit. When really, women, whenever y'all are done, y'all are actually, y'all will mentally disassociate first. Y'all are long done before you say you're done. And it can be like that for men too, though. It's not as common because men, we like to hold on to shit. We can always seem to like work something out, right? We feel like it can always be worked out. But when a woman is mentally done, shit, she disassociates. She was done long before she told you, kick rocks, nigga. But ultimately, it didn't make sense to me that a person who was supposed to be conscious, aware, supposed to be on my level with all this shit, and that's the thing. Like now, I'll make sure whatever the case is, since I'm spiritually sovereign, that I'm going to read the fucking energy. I'm going to read the room when I'm dealing with anyone. I'm no longer going to let surface level shit, I don't care how many books they got, what type of what they, cause she called herself a mystic, she called herself an alchemist and shit like that. So titles and shit like that to me don't matter. I'm not gonna let that be the get in free card. That's not the way into the party with me anymore. I'm going to test some shit. I'm gonna know for sure. I'm definitely gonna be listening to that intuition. I'm gonna be listening to spirit. Whenever I'm dealing with someone, if something is off, whatever the case is, I'm just gonna hold my ground before I give them any type of praise or give them any type of, any type of recognition or anything like that. I'm not judging whatever the case is, but I am silently. I'm fucking observing. That's for sure. But yeah, she definitely was using Chat GPT in order to talk to me, which is fucking insane, right? It was when I just and remember my priestess is telling me to take my natal chart and to basically put it into Chat GPT and let it explain certain things to me, let it break down certain things, and it can. When as it was breaking things down to me and as I was reading, there were certain things that stood out to me. And then I was like, wait a minute, the language, the tone in which it's typing to me is very familiar. So I go back to our text message, me and her text messages. And I'm looking at this shit and I'm like, bitch. She had been using ChatGPT to respond to certain things. Now understand, I'm using Gnosis. When I'm telling her about my meditations, when I'm telling her about my dreams and things like that, I'm giving her an account of these things from here, my own words, whatever the case is, from my own level of understanding, my own level of knowing. And this person, their replies were perfect. This person knew the language. I mean, she had solutions. She had explanations to certain things that I was like, damn. I always ask myself, well, damn, like, what is she studying? Because we don't have conversations about anything conscious, which is fucking funny to me. There's no way you know anyone who's conscious and y'all don't have conscious conversations, right? That's fucking weird, right? It would be weird. I'm not saying you want to talk about this shit every day. I don't want to talk about this shit every day. Even when even when once me and my my divine half, once we come together, whatever the case is, we're not gonna want to talk about this shit every day. That would be the person that I would be comfortable with, watching the day-to-day shit. We can watch I don't even watch Bad Girls Club and shit like that, or Love Island. We can fucking watch that together. You know why? Because when it's time to turn up and be person number 2, when it's time to sit back and observe, when it's time for that higher self to kick in, we can do that. Other than that, she and I get the privilege of our everyday normal selves. This being the person that everyone knew you as growing up, until one day you became this person, or you remembered this person. You just started to remember who you were, and then you became person number 2. You started uncovering more about yourself. You started gaining knowledge of yourself and things like that, and started remembering who the fuck you were, who you've always been in these different lifetimes and things like that. Not everyone deserves or should have access to that. Not necessarily, because many people you're gonna meet now, that's just who you are, right? But your friends and your family who didn't basically walk this path with you as you walk down the path of remembrance, they don't deserve that conscious you. Try it and see. Pull up to Thanksgiving or during the holidays and talk about any of this shit, and as my teachers have told me, they gonna shut your ass down. So what I mean is, when you finally find that person that you can talk to about these things that people would normally write you off about or call you crazy, you can actually just be yourself with them too, though. You can still just be you. Y'all can exist. Y'all can talk about the everyday mundane human shit, whatever the case is. it's a relief because whenever it's time to turn up that motherfucking frequency, bam, you with a person who's on that type of time and who know what fucking time it is. You get what I'm saying? They're not. There's not many of them, and you got to be right. Whatever the case is, you have to be in alignment. In order to even attract that divine half, because you're androgyny. You're like this, masculine and feminine. Before you incarnate down here, before you take on human form and you become this Leontre, or you become an Ash. I cannot pronounce your name to save my life, so I'm gonna call you Ash because I don't want to butcher that name. I really want to say Ashariah so bad. I don't even know if she's still here, but anyways, I'm getting off. I'm getting off subject here though. How do so we'll just do the research on how this connects with children. So Montauk conducted experiments. Let's see. Bingo! Here we go, because I was going to look for it in the source, but I remembered I didn't share any of that. And look at that book. Oh, that looks so much better than the book that I got. Oh, wait, so that's the Montauk Experiments and Times. I don't have this one. So this is the one that goes into how children were abducted. So I want y'all to read this really quick. We'll go to AI mode. We'll use AI real quick. They're gonna say lack of evidence. I don't trust AI because AI is new. I'm gonna deal with the sources because before the internet, whatever the cases, there were books. Before the books, there were scrolls and shit like that. Before the scrolls, there were fucking hieroglyphs and things like that. AI, whatever the cases, can be altered. So can information. That's why you got to go and get older text and you got to find multiple sources. That way, you can find things that reference each other, and then there you have it, right? But it says mind control experiments were conducted and runaway boys were abducted and brought out to the base where they underwent excruciating periods of both physical and mental torture in order to break their minds. Then their minds were reprogrammed. Many were supposedly killed during the process and buried on the motherfucking site. The funny thing is, I have a book at the bottom down there called The Bloodlines of the Illuminati. I'm going to save that for another live. Because even that mentions how the government has psychics, whatever the case is, in the United States. Many of these psychics, whatever the case is, are, they have been conducting them, or whatever the case is. They have been conducting experiments with these psychics who have given account of what they, what they experienced growing up in these labs and things like that. Many of them went through the MK Ultra programming and things like that. They were using these children, one of the cases, they were running psychic experiments on them, one of the cases. Many of these children had, I don't like to use the word gifts, because nobody is fucking special. What I will say is that I like to say abilities. And everyone has these abilities, right? But not everyone's abilities are adept, right? Some people's shit is, is dormant, right? Or it's suppressed, it's asleep. So a lot of times these abilities, whatever the case is, you have to awaken them. And then you have to do what? Once you awaken them, you have to look to understand them. Once you learn to understand them more through trying to what's the word I'm looking for? You have to learn to control them, but you learn to control them through what? Having to you have to train, or whatever the case is. You have to develop them. You have to learn to develop them, right? Through training and stuff like that. Mental training, physical training, blah, 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 the whole deal. Let's see. Because I wonder if it's going to mention that here, though. I'm looking for something. So it's in that book. It might have some references to children, and those children, or the cases being, experimented on. But what does that bring us back to? That brings us back to Hawkins, right? So it says here. It says these experiments yielded the births of a number of child test subjects. So even in Stranger Things, the laboratory, the Hawkins lab, whatever the case is, hosted experiments for the controversial government program known as MK Ultra. And you might think MK Ultra is some fake shit. There is a connection with MK Ultra in the Montauk experiment. All you gotta do is just literally, let's just use context clues. MK Ultra. Why did I spell it like that? Okay, so let's see. MK Ultra, the Montauk Project explained. Let's see. Does it mention that? There's definitely, I know it's in here. So ultimately, what are we getting at, right? So we're connecting the Montauk Project with the Hawkins experiment. So we know just off reading, right? Because I'm trying to make my point here, because now I see exactly where I'm projecting, where I'm going with this. And this is, I'm going to save this for another live, where I'm going to be more prepared and I'm going to be far more sharper, because I should have just locked in, maybe maybe just decided to go live and talk about this. Sorry, later, whatever the case is, once I made the connections and I have my sources truly lined up, which I do. I didn't expect to go this crazy with the Montauk and the Montauk experiment, and then the Hawkins experiment as well. Because I'm not gonna cover I'm not gonna cover Hellfire. Not today. I'm not even gonna touch that. Project MK Ultra. Okay, so MK Ultra was an illegal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, that's the CIA, to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used in altering human behavior. All right, the term MK Ultra is a CIA cryptonym. MK is an arbitrary. How the fuck do you say that? It's not arbitrary. It's arbitrary. Prefix standing for the Office of Technical Service, and Ultra is an arbitrary. I'm not gonna do this to myself. Well, I'm gonna find out if I'm pronouncing this correctly, because I'll be fucking up.
Arbitrary.
Okay, so I was okay. So is an arbitrary word out of a dictionary used to name this project. The program has been widely condemned as a violation of individual rights and an example of the CIA's abuse of power, with the critics highlighting its disregard for consent and its corrosive impact on democratic principles. The Project MK Ultra began in 1953 and was halted in 1973. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administrations of high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD, and other chemicals without the subject's consent. Additionally, the other methods beyond chemical compounds were used, including electroshock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. Damn. That makes me think of, when I think of all that, even though there was no reference of 11 being sexually abused, but Credo Mutua, who is a Zulu shaman, may he rest in power, talked about how the elite or the Illuminati or these secret societies abduct children. So when all these little fucking children go missing, whatever the case is, this is not by coincidence. All these children go missing, whatever the case is, and they wind up in certain places around the world. Epstein Island, right? Don't quote me. But we know child trafficking and things like that is mentioned around his motherfucking name and those who went to that island, right? They were, what Credo Mutual explains, because he was in these societies, these secret societies, is that they take children, they abduct these children, whatever the case is, and these people harness energy from these children through fear. Now, when a person is in extreme fear, they release this secretion, or they release this, what's the word I'm looking for? They release this pheromone that these people then feed off of, right? And they were doing these sex rituals on these children. The more afraid the child was, the more powerful the energy it was that they were siphoning. Now, don't quote me. You can look into Credo Mutual. This is Credo Mutual, right? So this is the Zulu shaman Credo Mutual, and from South Africa. There is a very famous, very well known and popular interview that he does with David Icke, where he explains this. Now, I'm not gonna lie. When he got down, when he started breaking down and explaining these rituals and how they abduct these children, and then they release them on the island, or they release them in these remote areas on purpose, after they hold the children hostage for a few days, and then they release them on purpose. And then they have someone already waiting or driving who intercepts the child. And you know, the child, whatever the case is, thinks they got away. And then this child, whatever the case is, flags down, you know, what they think is, or what they flag down, whatever the case is, what they assume is, you know, some type of help. You know, they're looking for help, whatever the case is. Only for the child to then get into the vehicle, whatever the case is, and then be driven back to the place. Imagine being tortured mentally and physically and sexually abused, only to escape for safety, to safety. Then to be picked up, and then watching yourself being driven back to the place which you just escaped from. Imagine what that's like, right? But you'll need to check out Credo Mutual and David Icke. You're gonna need to check out the interview, which is on YouTube. They're gonna talk about these reptilians. They're also gonna talk about the Chitauri. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this is the interview here. This is not the full interview. The interview is on YouTube, and it should be about 2 hours long. It should be this one right here. So it's this one right here. Is there a way for me to leave the link? I can leave the link. So let me copy this link. Trying to see, was there any other way for me to do this?
That went like 5 and 11.
And whoops. What am I doing? Whoops. What am I doing? Whoops. I'm gonna leave the link. I'm gonna leave the link. That's not the damn link. That's not the damn link. Let me just go to YouTube and get it. Fuck it. Let me just go to YouTube and get it. Fuck it. Let me just go to YouTube and get it. Fuck it. Let me just go to YouTube and get it. Fuck it.
This is day 1 of my husband doing Tai Chi walking workout. This is day 21 of my husband doing Tai Chi walking workout. My husband doing Tai Chi walking workout.
Okay, so. Okay, so there's the link to the interview. Take your time with that. I've been watching that for over 15 years. Long before I decided to do the research. I only started doing the research a few years ago, and I revisited the interview again earlier this year. Once I started getting more into Extraterrestrials, Friends and Foes by George C. Andrews. Right? You can see this book. Right? Let me close this out because it's echoing. I'm not gonna get all the way into that. But yes, and here they talk about aliens, allies, and then your enemies and things like that. They talk about the Greys. They talk about the Regilians. They talk about the what are the other ones? They talk about the tall blondes and things like that. They go into a lot. They talk about the Men in Black. They talk about the Majestic 12, which is a group of 12 elite scientists in the entire world, where the case is. They talk about a lot, and so if you've been following me for the past year or more, whatever the case is, then we went in heavy with this, whatever the case is, and we talked about a lot. But yeah, so when I started getting back into this, whatever the case is, and explaining certain things, I had to revisit Credo Mutual's interview with David Icke. And, he talked about the Chitauri, whatever the case is, which is the extraterrestrial. He talked about many extraterrestrials, but he talked about more specifically and mainly the Chitauri. Now, this Chitauri, whatever the case is, you want an idea of what they look like. They're green. And the funny thing is, the Chitauri, whatever the case is, are actually they're considered a race in the Avengers, right? But the Avengers got that shit from somewhere. So let's connect that with Credo Mutual. All right, so this is the depiction of the Chitauri. So as you can see down there's Credo Mutual, and then you can see a depiction of what he calls the Chitauri, whatever the case is. You see that third eye in the middle? Not all of them have that. So he breaks down the ranks. He explains how the reptilian or the Chitauri, whatever the case is, according to their ranks, they're a bit different in terms of looks and things like that. The more high ranking ones have horns, and when they have higher rank, or the cases, the horns are longer. The ones who are more psychic, whatever the cases, have the third eye. All of them communicate telepathically, which means they communicate mentally. They communicate through the mind, and he goes into a lot. But I'm not gonna get all into that. I left the link in the description. Please feel free to tune into that and watch that at your own. Watch that whenever you feel like it. Where we at on this stream? Who's all still here? There's so much to cover. Who's all still currently in the stream? Like, let me know real quick. I'm trying to decide what to do here. So I might as well just cover a bit about the Hellfire Club. Okay, so we made that connection between the Hawkins National Laboratory, whatever the case is, and the Montauk Project. So we know basically both of these labs, whatever the case is, conduct experiments on children, right? They use these children as test subjects and things like that. And let's see, who's all here? I don't know. So what I'm gonna do lastly is we're gonna look over the Hellfire Club. Let me bring up a picture. And we were supposed to go look for these labs, though, right? That was supposed to be one of the things that we did. Who's all still here right now? Because now I'm warmed up, and what I want to do is I want to continue this stream tomorrow. Because now I know exactly where I'm going with this. Because I wasn't sure whenever I started this day. I didn't want to be everywhere. And I'm not sure who's still here. So let's just look over this really quick. Well, first, okay. Eddie Stranger Things. So here's the notorious picture of Eddie here. And as you can see, I'm in the way, am I? Aren't I? I'm really in the way. Okay. So y'all can see Eddie here at the bottom. He has this he has the Hellfire Club shirt on. Now let's go to photos really quick. Okay, so this is from the Encyclopedia of the Occult. All right, so we're gonna read over the term the Hellfire Club in the Encyclopedia of the Occult, right? So the Hellfire Club. Well, first, before I read over that, so the Hellfire Club in Stranger Things is basically the group of kids who play D&D, right? Okay, so the Hellfire Club in Stranger Things is Hawkins High School official Dungeons and Dragons D&D club, right? Led by the charismatic outcast Eddie Munson in season 4, serving as a haven for outsiders and a central plot device as the town's new satanic panic wrongly blames them for murders linked to Vecna, the season's main villain. All right, so we know now, right? So Hawkins, whatever the case is, the Hellfire Club in Stranger Things is basically the D&D club, right? The Hawkins High School official Dungeons and Dragons club, right? Correct? So now we're going to go look at the actual definition for the real Hellfire Club, which is a secret society. So I'm going to be reading you the Hellfire Club definition from the new Encyclopedia of the Occult. I have that right here. And you might need to go get this if you are into the occult. If you want to know more about the terms, you can go get that, or any encyclopedia or dictionary that deals with the occult. You can go and get that. Okay, so let's read it. So remember, in Stranger Things, Hawkins High School, the Hellfire Club is basically Hawkins High School official Dungeons and Dragons club, correct? Led by Eddie, right? Okay, so here's the actual definition of the Hellfire Club. a real secret society. The Hellfire Club, the Friars of St. Francis of Wakambi, as the club was formerly known, had developed a largely undeserved reputation in histories of Satanism. So, just tying it up there. It was founded by Sir Francis Dashwood and a group of his friends in 1746, at the peak of the Gothic craze in English popular culture. Early meetings were held at the George and Vulture, a London tavern, but in 1752 the club moved operations to Medham, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Abbey, and met there for the rest of its existence. Now, what does that sound like? Stranger Things season 1, or the case is, what are the gangs doing? What are they meeting? Where did they meet at? They meet in what? Mike's. They're at Mike's basement, correct? Because what does that sound like? That sounds a lot like, so you see how they said that they had like a little meeting spot and then they moved it over to the cases, and this is where they met for the rest of the existence. Talking about the original Hellfire's Club, right? By with Francis and all them. Let's look into let's get out of mic. Where's my other thingy at? I don't know. Got rid of it. Oh, it's the other window. Okay. So we all know this Mike's basement. Let me full screen this. And I really gotta move myself around. I didn't know I was like in the way of everything. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here's a picture from Mike's basement, right? So it says the escape room will resemble Mike's Willis basement with Dungeons and Dragons, paraphernalia, lava lamps, and bad lighting. So this is the club, right? Now they're not called the Hellfire Club yet. So you got to remember that it's not. They're not. It's not called the Hellfire. They don't come to know this Hellfire's Club until they get into high school, whatever the case is, and they meet Eddie. And the Hellfire Club is, well, it's basically for outsiders. The nerds, whatever the case is. I was a nerd in school, but I wasn't a nerd, but whatever the case is, but I did nerdy shit. Like I played Yu-Gi-Oh still. Like I was still into all that, whatever the case is. So I still had friends who were actual literal nerds who were considered outsiders because they couldn't really link with all the popular kids. And I was not a popular kid in high school. I knew people who were fucking popular, and you know I was known, but I wasn't known. I wasn't like, I don't know what the fuck popular truly means other than just being famous. I mean, I think I was pretty well known at the school, but I wouldn't consider myself popular or of the popular crowd, you know. But I definitely knew the ones who weren't popular, right? I definitely knew who the nerds were, correct? So when you look at these, look at Dustin, you look at Mike, and you look at Lucas here, whatever the case is. They're down in the basement, whatever the case is, and it doesn't look like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons at the time. But I'm trying to find that famous photo of all of them. Okay, here's one. Let's try and blow it up, I guess, right? So I'm guessing that they call it the escape room. Is it called the escape room? I didn't know it was called that. I didn't know they called it the escape room. But anyways, everyone gets the point, correct? So okay, there we go. Okay, so the Hellfire Club in Stranger Things is Hawkins High's high school official Dungeons and Dragons D&D club, right? Now, where else? Where were we? Where is this? Oh, right. We were photos. My bad. My bad, y'all. I got a little mixed up. Even though it's I brought it up there, but let's go ahead and make this bigger. Okay, so the Hellfire Club, the Friars of Saint Francis of I think I'm pronouncing that right, Wakambi, as the club was formerly known, has developed a largely undeserved reputation in histories of Satanism. It was founded by Sir Francis Dashwood and a group of his friends in 1746. So why do I feel like Sir Francis was more so Eddie? Cause you gotta remember who founded the Hellfire Club? Eddie did, right? Boom. So it says led by charismatic outcast Eddie Munson. Because I don't remember them actually calling it the Hell's Fire Club until they meet Eddie. So Eddie would be what? Eddie would be our later day Francis. You get what I'm saying? So there's the connection there, right? And there's much more to read about this. It gets weird with this hell. The original secret society known as the Hell's Fire Club it gets very weird, and we're gonna read more about that. But I wanted to basically bridge the connection between the occult, the hidden meaning of this Hell's Fire Club that you learn about and you see in Stranger Things, because it is actually connected to a real secret society, right? And we're gonna continue reading on with that, and it's gonna damn near bring me to a close, because now I just realized there's so much more for me to cover, but I need to make sure I'm sharp and that I'm prepared, but I'm all over the place. I didn't want to do that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lock in. Instead of going over all three parts, we're gonna lock in for part 2, where we're gonna talk more about we're gonna do one with the Demogorgon, because the definition of that is actually in the Webster's dictionary. I actually shared information about that a few days ago. Those of you following me on Instagram, you saw that the Demogorgon is actually a literal term in the dictionary. I have a 1990s dictionary, where the case is, which gives you the definition of the Demogorgon, right? And we can Google it as well and look into it. So I know the Duffel brothers for a fact studied the occult. You have to have studied the occult. They got their ideas for Stranger Things from real sources, real events. And they just love the 80s. I love the 80s. I was born in 91, but I mean, the 80s is just right there, right? So anyways, so founded by Sir Francis Dashwood and a group of his friends in 1746. So when I think of Sir Francis, I think of Eddie, I think of Lucas, and his friends, I think of Lucas, I think of Will, I think of Mike, I think of Max, I think of Dustin, the whole gang, you know. A group of friends in 1746 at the peak of the Gothic craze in English popular culture. Early meetings were held at the George and Vulture, a London tavern, right? So what I like to do is I like to go look into stuff like that. We should go and find that. We should go find that. So let's go look at this, right? Let's go see what the George and Tavern looks like today. I mean, the London Tavern looks like today. Let's go to maps really quick. What the hell is maps? Why can't I look at that on maps? Oh, I'm blind. Y'all gotta forgive me. I'm blind. Here it is there. And this is the fun thing. God damn it. Where did that go? Guys, I lost it. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. We'll just click on it, and then we'll drop him there. So we're gonna have a look at what's called the George Inn Tavern. Where is it at? That's not it. Is this it? No. I mean, maybe it'll help if we get the literal street, you know? I felt like we dropped right in on top of it, right? Okay, here we go. What does that say? Is this it? No. What's this? Well, fuck me. I know it's here, right? We just... I feel like we're like really close. Wherever the hell it is, it's like right here somewhere. Escape Entertainment. Well, I'm like fucking stuck. So it's a restaurant. So what the hell is it? Okay, this is what we're gonna do. Bingo, here it is. Sorry about that, but here it is. So this is the George and Vulture. This is where they used to meet. This is where the original members of the Hellfire Club, the real secret society, used to meet. They used to meet here. This is the place. Okay, I can't go any further. This is as far as I can look. So what does that remind you of? It looks like a double-headed phoenix to me, though. Kind of reminds me of a phoenix, but it has like that serpent tongue. Maybe I don't know, some type of dragon or some shit. Or it's a vulture. It looks like a double-headed vulture to me. I guess that's the depiction of or symbol of the vulture for them, whatever. Oh, so we were there. Damn, we were there the entire time. I just had to turn around. So there it is, right? That's where they used to meet. And let's continue on here. And I'm probably going to end the stream in just a moment because we're going to pick back up on this tomorrow. Okay, so early meetings were held at the George and Vulture, a London tavern, but in 1752, the club moved operations to Medmenham Abbey and met there for the rest of its existence. So let me copy the text there. And now, let's go and look for that really quick. Interesting stuff. Antoine funny. Okay. So, this is where they used to meet. I'm guessing was a house, I guess? Oh, no, so Medmenham is a village in a civil parish in southwest Buckinghamshire, England. Okay, it's on the river of Thames, and 3 plus 1.5 miles southwest of Marlow. Cool. So let's go ahead and finish up reading here because I'm going to touch on the rest of this tomorrow. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so it says the Hellfire Club was essentially a group of bored, wealthy Englishmen with a taste for orgies and the fondness for Gothic kitsch. Members attended meetings in black monastic robes and were accompanied by nuns who were either professional prostitutes, or enthusiastic amateurs. Burlesque, burlesque ceremonies, plenty of alcohol, and indiscriminate lovemaking were the chief orders of business at meetings. So they had these, I don't even know what the hell that is, burlesque ceremonies, plenty of alcohol. So they had alcohol, they indiscriminate lovemaking, so there's some gay shit going on there. And if you're into that, that's what you're into. They said these were the chiefs, so these were the top orders of business at the meeting. So that's what they were doing. Sound like a bunch of fucking and drinking was going on at these clubs, at these meetings, right? So the club's membership included some of the leading political and cultural figures of the time. Oh, why is that so interesting to me? We're gonna save that. The club's membership included some of the leading political and cultural figures of the time, including the Earl and Butte and George Wilkes. Benjamin Franklin was there, whose web of connections involved secret societies on 2 continents, was a member during his stay in England. The club faded out of existence sometime around 1780. When they say faded out into existence, what that really means, I'm going to tell you the occult meaning of that. It just changed its fucking name. That's what it did. They don't just fade out as shit like that. They changed their name. Basically, the group isn't called, they don't go by the Hellfire Club anymore. It has some different title to this day. They're going by some different title, whatever the case is. So that brings us, and then there's the time. So 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 11 seconds, right? So that's gonna bring me to my conclusion for today. I'm not satisfied. I'm satisfied for what we were able to cover today. I hope this was somehow eye-opening. I know I went everywhere, whatever the case is. I went all over the place. But don't worry, tomorrow I'm going to pick this back up, and I'm going to be a lot sharper, and we're going to stay focused on one aspect of all this, whatever the case is, throughout the entire video, whatever the case is, the entire live. I want to say thank you to all who tuned in. Again, I hope some of this was eye-opening, that made you maybe perhaps curious, maybe answer some things for you, and overall, I'm just happy to have gotten the ball rolling with this, whatever the case is, because tomorrow I'm really gonna go a little deeper into more of this, whatever the case is. So other than that, thanks everyone for tuning in. I know I kind of sound like shit. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Other than that, I'm out.